Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Thanks to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring the New Stack's coverage from KubeCon plus CloudNativeCon in Copenhagen, Denmark. Learn more about the CNCF and its technical projects at cncf.io. All right, hey, it's Alex Williams, the New Stack here, starting the day at KubeCon plus CloudNativeCon in Copenhagen, and I'm so happy to have some guests with me today. We're going to talk about Prometheus. I'm really interested in discussing kind of this new approach to data that we're seeing in Kubernetes architecture, which I think is really epitomized and symbolized really with Prometheus and other kind of tools that we're seeing that go with these graph databases, for example, that can be used to gain better observability. So our theme is really observability. So why don't we just get started, and why don't you guys just introduce yourselves, and we'll begin this conversation. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so my name is Allison Richardet, and I work for a company called Asteris in St. Louis, Missouri, in the U.S. And we work for several different companies that we've done, in the past. We are a consulting firm, so we're currently working with a large financial firm and helping them move to the cloud. So observability is pretty important for them.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm Brian Brazel. I'm one of the main developers on Prometheus, and I've been working on it for just about 4 years now, I think. In fact, my 4th year anniversary of my first commit, I think, is next week. And in addition to that, I'm also the founder of Robust Perception, which is a consulting company around Prometheus. So we're helping companies from startups up to Fortune 500s get the most out of their monitoring and see more into their systems, because a lot of them say they have the same problems. It's like, what's going on with our systems? How do we have graphs to make sense?
Mm-hmm. So perhaps we could start kind of like thinking about observability now in two contexts, because observability is one of those concepts that is actually, it can take on different casts, so to speak. It can have different meanings. So I'm curious on what your thoughts are about the way that we're thinking about observability. What would be your kind of working set of definitions of observability in itself?
So one of the things that I've been looking at is observability and how to help application developers get that, to be more a part of what they're doing on a daily basis. So I think a lot of observability is geared towards operations. So I think it's important that application developers are able to speak that language as well. And so one of the things that I've been looking at is an event grammar to use for service logging. So application developers can use that, and just to give them a way to bridge what they're doing to make the service logging available to operations, and to make it easier to do things like query that data and use the visualization tools like Prometheus and Grafana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you define it?
So it is a bit of a nebulous term.
Yeah.
Like with many terms, there's a lot of marketing going on, so it's a little difficult to say it. But even the term operability, like, can I as an administrator administer this piece of software? And part of that is, can I see what it's doing? And this could be, can I see its performance in terms of CPU? Can I see its performance in terms of sales per second? Can I see its performance in terms of all these different things for different definitions of performance to understand what's going on inside it and be able to work from there? Like, can I observe what it's doing? And in what sense?
Mm-hmm. And so when you get to that point of observability, then it comes down to what constitutes that observability, really, and it can be in different manners. But we've seen it in the context of monitoring, alerting, and traceability, for example, right? And those then provide kind of that combined capability to then see a problem maybe in a different kind of a view, right, from a different kind of a perception. Is that in line with your own experiences and what you've seen out kind of in working with customers?
So I think that when a lot of people just say that there's a division between monitoring and observability. And the thing is, alerting to me is just the very, very first thing you want in there. But that's nice and all, but really there's so much more information you can have about your application than just the things you alert on. You can know, which code paths are being used, how often are they being used, are they worth your time spending money on? And looking beyond just, is it turned on? It's okay, actually, 5% of our code paths are going that way. Maybe we should investigate that more, invest more human time in it, or maybe that's weird and we need to look at it more.
Yeah, I agree. The metrics and alerting is just the tip of the iceberg. One thing that I've been looking into a lot is distributed tracing and using open tracing to gain insights into the overall system and to see traces of where processes are going and where time is being spent in different services. So that can help pinpoint issues with latency and different things like that in the observability story.
And you're then using Grafana to help kind of do that to some degree.
So for open tracing, I'm using Jaeger to visualize.
You're using Jaeger.
Yes.
Why'd you choose Jaeger?
Jaeger is an open source tool that's commonly used in the Go programming language for visualization. It's written in Go. So I'm a Go developer, so
Oh, you are?
I chose Jaeger.
Nice. Nice. How about you? How about this kind of concept around raw data? And what were some of the original philosophies about Prometheus that I think embody why it is associated with Prometheus, why it is associated with observability today?
So when you look about getting information from your application, there's a fundamental problem that the raw data is just too big, right? You cannot get every single if statement of every single execution unless you have a really small system. So you have to decide to make some form of trade-off. So you have the metrics trade-off, which is we're just generally tracking how things are going at various points. We don't care about individual user requests, individual events, but we're tracking that, hey, there were 100 of them inside the last minute. You then have logs, which is a different way of looking at things, where it's okay, it's every single event, but we can't look at it at all 10,000 code points in the application because that's too broad. And then kind of got your profiling tools, which like GCC or CPROF or whatnot, that are getting lots of information, but you can't turn them on all the time. Because it would just be too much of a performance hit and once again too much data. So in that context, you got the metrics from Prometheus, handles the metrics part of that, but then you'd need tools like Jaeger to look at just tracing and distributed tracing. You might need something like the Elk stack or one of the other logs vendors to do with your logs. And these are all complementary solutions. No one of them is going to be enough.
Right. It's about finding the clues. That's how it's often described to me. It's developers love to help. Developers love to find the clues that can help them, help them do something, and that seems to be part of the real value that comes with, the concept of observability and the ability to surface that in, graph database environments like Prometheus. But what is it that you want to see extended through Prometheus, or maybe what are some of the other kind of ways that you think that the space is starting to open up a little bit more to be able to create some deeper resource optimization, but also a deeper observability? It's really going to be required as we start thinking about much more nodes overall. There's going to be just an explosion of them. We're going to see that without a doubt over the next few years. So I'm just curious.
Well, there is the monitoring system performance problems of how much hardware do I need to throw at my monitoring system to be able to handle more nodes. But I think the more interesting things are from the developer standpoint, because as I said previously there, historically a lot of monitoring is for operations people, not for developers. So we need to get developers used to the idea that monitoring works for them too, and start instrumenting their code, whether that be with log lines, whether that be with tracing endpoints, whether that be with metrics, so they can actually see that value out.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned earlier about having clues and tying in application developers with observability is, so this event grammar that I'm using, it models language basically. So instead of having just raw logs, we're using fields to structure the log. So it's easier to query, and it really enriches the data and gets us the information faster and encouraging application developers to use this grammar helps them see how what they're doing on a daily basis can help observability and really improve that. And then actually using this grammar in the tracing, in open tracing, and putting that grammar in the tags for spans.
So it's coming down to that, yeah, very much kind of like, because there could be a lot of meaning there, and so you really need to break that down to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's also just having structured information.
Right.
Because if you just have random logs, then yes, I can go and do some set and awk and use the standard tools like that to do it. But that works fine on one machine. You might be able to work on 5. It's not going to work in Kubernetes. Mm-hmm. But having structured logs and then not all being managed all the way through, or having structured metrics and a standard format that your system can process, or open tracing, which is an API, which can then be done. It's all about standardization, because if everyone is doing something different, then you have to integrate with every single one of those individually, and that's not where the value is. Mm-hmm. The value isn't creating 1,000 integrations. It's in actually what do we do with the data once we have it.
Yeah, if we can, right, and if everyone's doing something different, it's hard to get a better picture. So if we can get everyone...
When you say everyone's doing something different, so that's why the grammar is so important.
Yeah, it helps bridge the gap between developers and observability and bring the tools together to speak the same language. So open tracing and service logging and events that are being created.
Because without that grammar, then you can't have that structure.
Exactly. Like one of the things that's kind of happening right now in the ecosystem is the Prometheus metrics format is becoming a de facto standard, and that's great because it means people can reuse all the exporters that are created, the 300 plus of them, and use those integrations rather than have to recreate it. And you can do that without ever using Prometheus. So like there's other monitoring systems out there like Dataloop, Datadog, Sysdig can all parse our format. And we have parsers out there that you can use, so everyone's just taking advantage of the rich ecosystem that Prometheus has to, solve the interesting problems rather than everyone having to reinvent, okay, how does MySQL export metrics? How does Cassandra export metrics? How does HA proxy export metrics? We've already figured that out. Take advantage of that fact.
Well, terrific. So what are some of the topics of interest for you then? And as you're coming into the conference here at KubeCon, CloudNativeCon, but also moving out beyond it, because you have customers like banks, you're saying, like, who are asking probably a lot of questions that you're trying to get answered here to some degree. What are some of the questions that are going through your all minds as you're kind of thinking to your customers and going back to work when the conference ends?
So actually we have workshops weekly with some of the application developers for the company that we're consulting with. So I think just getting more information on newer practices in this area and different things that we can share with them on observability and security and things like that would be important.
Yeah. Well, I find it's always useful to be kind of on top of the state of the art.
Yeah.
Because our business is entirely Prometheus, at least by the letter of the law. However, in reality, we end up helping customers with Mesos, with Kubernetes, whatever, and help them use those systems better. So having that context helps us provide a richer service to our customers.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, Allison and Brian. Thank you for joining us on the New Stack podcast, the first one here from KubeCon, CloudNativeCon in Copenhagen. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring the New Stack's coverage from KubeCon plus CloudNativeCon in Copenhagen, Denmark. Learn more about the CNCF and its technical projects at cncf.io. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.